introduction because introductions are overrated and a waste of time half the time because you don't care that much about me. You care more about the content. So I'm basically going to go through kind of today. We have slides. I'm going to do a little bit differently. I'm not going to share my screen. I'm just going to put them right here on my camera basically so you can see them that way. I am very okay if you unmute and interrupt me as long as it's related to the presentation, like asking questions, stuff like that. So if you want to unmute and ask a question, go in the chat, ask a question, go for it. I mean, if you're interrupting me to tell me I'm wrong, I might just mute you. But otherwise, I'm pretty okay if you guys interrupt with any questions or anything like that. So feel free to interrupt, whether it's in the chat box or there. Any questions you want, I'm always happy to answer them. If we happen to run out of time, you still have questions left, you can always reach out to me either on Facebook, Instagram, or email me. Shoot me your questions that way. I'll answer them all. So just if you have anything left over we couldn't get to because of time or anything like that, I'm always happy to jump in and do it. But today, kind of the goal is to talk about how to generate and convert more leads. So we're kind of going to walk through the first half of like how you generate leads online, a little bit about like your different options in terms of generating them too. And then we'll get into like the more important part, which is actually how to then turn those leads into clients. So kind of walk you through that again. There's no questions that you can't ask at any point. If you have any tips you want to give in, like you've seen something work well for you in that type of realm, feel free to throw it into the chat, stuff like that. But for the most part, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know, and then I'll answer all your questions throughout, or if you want to save them at the end, that's okay too. So like I said, I'm going to skip the intro. Basically, we work with a lot of agents across North America. I was also an agent myself. So everything we talk about is stuff that we know actively works in the market. Majority of our clients are Canadian, so it's mostly stuff that works across Canada. I mean, just by the nature of the agent population, the majority would be GTA and southern BC, but that's just because that's where most agents in Canada are. But certainly we have clients kind of all across the country. And we have a few in the States, but that's just by referral. So I'm going to jump right in. First thing I always hear when dealing with leads, and this is actually, if you talk to anyone who runs a company that generates leads for agents, you will hear one of three things, and they're all the same thing, which is the leads are crap. Normally it's said a little bit more colorfully than that. There's obviously some choice words that other people use, but generally it's this: the leads are weak, the leads are crap, the leads are poop, that type of idea. They're not. Like, leads are leads. Like, if you want to get like give you kind of some rough stats, the average agent converts at about 2% all their leads. So if you're average, you're converting 2%, which a lot of people don't think about means 98 no's for every 2 yeses. But even in that, that's misleading because some of those no's are fake numbers, fake emails. Like, you have to expect when you're doing this, there's going to be a percentage of people that are giving you fake information or just aren't going to pick up when you call, or they put in someone else's information. So you call and someone's like, I have no idea who you are. Sometimes they like that could be they forgot they opted in, but it could also be that they changed the phone number and accidentally changed it to someone else's real number. So there, when you hear like 2%, you got to assume anywhere, it depends on the market we found, anywhere from 10 to 25% of the leads you're getting can be 100% garbage, but it's sorting through enough of them to get to the good ones. Solid agents with a really good follow-up plan are usually in that like 4 to 6% conversion rate. Now, there's also different types, which we'll talk about, because like for example, you can get up to like a 20, 30% conversion rate, but that is a completely different strategy you're going on. Whereas most agents have most people generate leads, and the easiest way to generate leads, you're going to be at that 2%. And then as you get experience, you get a good system in place, you can be in that 4 to 6. But I find even 4 to 6 is misleading for a lot of people. Don't expect to get there in the first year. Because what a lot of people, when they get that 4 to 6% conversion rate, means is you have 1 to 2% this year. Next year, you convert another 1 to 2%, but then 1 to 2% of last year's leads. Because some leads can be 12 months or more from converting because they're just not ready yet. So if you keep following up, you can now convert some of last year's leads. And that over time should add up to an average of 4 to 6% conversion rate. And if you can convert 4 to 6%, oh, sorry, I just hit my table. If you convert 4 to 6% of our leads, you're going to have an excellent ROI. Even a 2% conversion rate, your ROI is going to be very strong, but you still have to get there. So we always hear this: the leads are weak. And you, like, if you find the leads are weak at one provider, you're not going to another provider. They don't have a silver bullet that's going to be that much different than the last one. So if you bounce from 5 or 6 providers, we who are the providers know that you will probably be bouncing from us in a few months, and we'll be going to the next person, including us in the list of people that you didn't like as you go to the next one. So you're more like, you're better off looking at how can I fix my follow-up process than you are like changing providers again and again and again. Please address different experience levels. Some of us may not be very familiar with Facebook usage. We'll go through that all. So we're going to have some stuff to cover a little bit of the beginner side of it as well. And then obviously we'll have stuff for kind of the more experienced in here too. This is the biggest challenge that we work with agents, is literally 40% just don't even get contacted. Like, it's a wild stat that, like, we've seen it time and time again with agents we work with, that we'll generate leads and they just don't call them at all. And then a lot, it's like they'll call once, 3 days later, and if they don't pick up, that's it. Like, you have to have a follow-up plan in place. And really, like, a lot of the times we're working with people, it's finding, like, essentially for them, what are the holes in their bucket? And this happens a lot, is like people are generating a ton of leads, but they have so many holes in their bucket that it's all leaking out and they're not making the revenue off it that they should. So sometimes what we'll do with some clients is we actually will turn off leads to help work with them on their bucket and repairing it so that they actually can have an effective follow-up strategy. Because if you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't have a plan in place for that long-term conversion. And so you really want to think about, like, where could someone be leaking? I mean, a short, easy exercise is become a lead yourself. Like, walk through your own process of, if I was to like opt in on a form on my website, what does that look like for me start to finish? How would I feel about that going through? And that's a quick way to just assess, or get someone you know to do it. And like, but have them not tell you when they're doing it, and to use a fake name, so that when you're reaching out, they can even tell you, like, okay, you took this long to respond to me, and here's how it felt doing this. Like, do that type of thing can have a big impact on your conversion process. Like, this is one of my favorite stories out of Disney. So I love watching Disney customer service stuff. And one thing they do is they make executives, as an example, walk through Disney on their knees so that they can get a view of Disney as if they were a child. So that they know, okay, like, if I was a child walking through Disney, here's what I do. And one of the things they learned was they have to lower the height of all the windows of the stores because the kids couldn't see in. So they lowered the windows, and the like amount of sales they're doing in stores shot up because now the kids could see in and point to their mom and dad and go, no, I want that they couldn't do before. So put yourself in your customer's shoes, run through it, and see how that looks on your end, on their end. So first I want to get through is generating leads. Then the second half will focus more on converting. So the first thing to understand is, and I'm using Facebook as a placeholder here for all social media, like platform, yes, there's advantages, disadvantages to things like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all the different ones. I'm using Facebook as a stand-in for all of them. Then on the other side, Google. I'm using Google as a stand-in as if like Bing is a thing, but let's be honest here, it's only really Google. Bing, it's like, if you don't know how to change your browser, you just happen to have one of those browsers that defaults to Bing, that's the only time you're ever using Bing. No one like goes and searches for Bing. No one's like, oh, I got to Bing that. Like, that's not a thing. It's Google. That's it. So Facebook, social media, the main difference between that and Google is Google's intent-based. So I'm going to Google and saying, I'm looking for a 4-bedroom home in Oakville. On Facebook, I'm looking at who got fat from high school, and then I just happen to see that now there's something like a home that might interest me. So it's more interruption-based marketing. That's the key difference here, is one is intent-based, one's interruption-based. The beauty of like an intent-based ad like Google is you don't have to be clever. You just have to show them. Like, there's a guy named Dean Jackson I'll reference later. He's like, what's the easiest way to sell a horse? And it's just a sign that says horse for sale. Because someone who wants to buy a horse doesn't need convincing. They just need a horse to buy. Most people aren't going to just like randomly see a clever ad on Facebook and be like, I am going to go buy a horse. Like, that's not the type of people that buy horses. They already know they want a horse. That's Google. Google, like, if someone searches 4-bedroom homes for sale, all you need is an ad that says, find a 4-bedroom home for sale. Like it's a very, relatively speaking, simple thing on Google, but it's highly competitive. So your leads coming off something like Google are generally a higher quality than you're going to get off social media if you're doing paid ads, but you're going to pay a lot more because of that. So what we might see on Google, where you might average, say, like $7 to $15 a lead in some areas on Google, you might be able to get $1 to $3 a lead on Facebook or social media in general. Facebook right now is the lowest cost per lead that we've tested. So for you, it then becomes, is my conversion rate that much better on Google that it's worth spending more, or getting more leads off Facebook for cheaper that I will then convert? For most people, if you have a good follow-up process, it's better to do Facebook from that sense because you just have more leads. If you do not have a follow-up process at all, you might then be better off on Google because there is that slightly higher conversion rate. In an ideal world, it's a combination of two, and you start doing things like all your Google leads get retargeted with Facebook ads and getting into that stuff. But if you have to pick between one or two, you'll pay less for them on Facebook, you'll pay more for them on Google. Google's slightly higher quality. But just when you're thinking about like crafting your ads and writing them, it's just important to understand the difference between intent-based and interruption-based, because that changes how you structure it. Like with Facebook, we have to write them in a way to grab attention. Google, you already have their attention because they're looking for it. So you're just changing slightly how you're writing those campaigns. And then, so like as an example, these are some Facebook ads we ran for listings. Listings are the easiest way to get leads. You can see like on the right there, if you can't read them, in just in case it's too small, it's like 68 cents a lead, $2.59. There's one there at 647, 229, 128, 220. Like for the most part, if you're running ads on Facebook, especially if you have a listing to advertise, you're going to average $1 to $3 a lead. You can see in that screenshot I just took of like the most recent campaigns, we got one there at 647, the odd house that happens. But like for me, like I know if we run an ad for a client and we get 647 for a listing ad and they just paid for that, I will give them their next listing for free because I understand that that didn't work out. But 1 to 3 is kind of the average. So if you spent $50 advertising a listing and your goal was leads and you didn't get any, that's because something was screwed up in the ad, whether that was a technical thing or you didn't set it up properly. But it is really easy to get $1 to $3 a lead once you see how. So as an example, this is the one ad for one listing, and this is actually just 3 variations of it. They're really simple. Basically, it's like, there is more under that see more. I just didn't fit in the preview, so I did it this way. You can see like 93 cents a lead, $1.15, $1.78. How we did it here, basically grabbed 3 photos. We always include the outside. Sometimes we go backyard. If the backyard's not great, we will not include the backyard. And then we'll take 2 photos from inside. You would think that there's some correlation of like, oh, the kitchen always gets the best cost per lead. It doesn't. It's sometimes really random. Like you can see here in these, while the lead costs are relatively close, the shot of the dining room there got the best cost per lead. Like I've seen one where like the foyer outperforms like the beautiful gourmet chef's kitchen. There doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason. Like the most consistent one usually is the outside of the home. But when we start adding in interior photos, we haven't found any specific trend of, oh, kitchen always gets a better cost per lead. It's not the case at all. So we just essentially, to a degree, at random, pick nice pictures from the lot and we'll test it out. Which you can see with this one, like the cheapest one was one that I would never have guessed the random dining room table shot of the interior of this house would get 78 cents a lead versus the other ones. So there's a little bit of always you're testing these things out. But with these ads, with listing ads, Facebook lead forms, if you're not familiar with Facebook lead forms, this is how we run all our listing ads when the goal is leads. Basically what it is, they click on the ad, a form pops up on Facebook, and it actually pulls their account information off their Facebook account and pre-fills in the form. So the name, email, and phone number they have associated with their Facebook account already fills in the form for them. They just hit submit. The upside of this, cheap leads, like you can see. The downside, one, some people forget they opted in because it's so easy. It's like Apple's terms and conditions. They see a pop-up, they hit submit. They don't realize that they just gave you their information. The nice thing about this is you're more likely to get correct information because it's pre-filled in. Like they can still go in and change the pre-filled in information. The biggest variable there we found is emails correlated to age. So with like the under 35 crowd, you're more likely to have the wrong email address, mainly because they probably signed up back when they were younger and they had their like high school email address. So you'll see like beachbabe@hotmail.com. And then when they grew up and got a real email address, they didn't update their old Hotmail one on Facebook because they didn't care. So generally, like on that under 35, there's a little bit more of fake email addresses. We find over 35, less of that because people have had the same email address for longer. But for the most part, pretty good, correct information. Most of the time, when you do get the right phone number, it's the cell phone number, which means you can text the leads, which we'll talk about a bit later. But Facebook lead ads are great for that. Now, you do get people who like didn't realize, like I was saying, on the other downside of Facebook lead ads is Facebook doesn't send you the lead automatically. You got to use a tool like Zapier, or depending on your CRM and what you're using, like if you're using RLP Sphere, you can set it up to have the leads go right into RLP Sphere automatically. But that doesn't happen on its own. Like you have to take extra steps to set it up. Otherwise, it just sits on the back end of your page and you have to go download it. Zapier to do this is not expensive. It's like 20 bucks a month to get the feature to send zaps of leads. To me, that's worth it for the speed that you can respond to leads at that point. So I would recommend setting something up to automate them if you're doing Facebook lead ads. The topic of forced registration comes up quite a bit. Basically, what this means, someone comes on your website, you force them to register to look at properties. There's different stages of this. So there is the don't let them see anything, and then they have to register. There's the like let them look at 2 or 3 photos, then make them register. There's also the like let them look at 2 or 3 properties, then make them register. The longer you delay the forced registration, the more you're going to pay per lead, just because you're going to get less people. Now, the earlier you make that forced registration, the lower quality leads you're going to be getting. So if you want to do forced registration, it's predictable. That's a nice thing about it, is you'll know, roughly speaking, whether that for you, that number's $2, $5, $10 a lead. You're going to know for every X amount of dollars you spend, you're going to get leads in. And eventually when you start working them, you'll know you'll convert 2, 5, whatever percent is that you end up being the one that you convert at. If you take off forced registration, it is, especially early on, going to be very unpredictable the number of leads you get. You might get none for a while. Like for example, if you guys know Justin Haver out in Calgary, actually just did an episode of my show with him when we were talking about this. He right now generates about 150 to 200 leads a day off his website without forced registration. It took him 12 months of investing $4,000 to $5,000 a month to even get one lead off his website on a regular basis. But he did it for 12 months and investing in SEO for no forced registration to pay off for him. Now he's getting 150, 200 a day. But again, like it was 12 months of investing at a high level of spend to get there. So now that type of lead that's not forced to register and everything's open, he has people on his team converting as high as 22% of the leads coming in into clients. But that 22% conversion only works because he's not asking anyone to forcefully register. So the only people registering are those who actually want to talk to an agent. That's an easier call to make. It's a friendlier call to make. But again, it's a lot less predictable the amount of leads you're going to get. So that's where you really have to be careful of like what is more important to you. And what some clients can do is maybe start with forced registration while you're building up your consistent organic traffic, and then eventually transition to a non-forced registration. So like there's no right answer for some versus another. You might want to start one way and move to the other later on. The biggest question for me when I'm talking to agents about whether you should do forced registration is how you want your brand to be perceived by other people. Forced registration is better for you. Open registration is better for the consumer. What one, it's up to you, kind of like what's the right one for you. I mean, if I went back to sales, I wouldn't do forced registration personally, but that's just because that's something that I'd be working on in a certain way. But there's no right or wrong here. It's what fits better for your business. And you might want to test both ways and see what you like, and even test the different types of forced registration. But just know that it's more predictable, the amount your leads, but it's not as good of an experience for the consumer. So it's going to be a bit more of a grind to convert them. Whereas people coming in off no forced registration, it's harder to get them to convert that way, but it's a higher quality lead when it does come through. Facebook ads, this is kind of the big one is we see ads all the time and you can tell right away someone doesn't run Facebook ads if their ad is just whether you're looking to buy, sell, or invest, call me. And then they put like their phone number in the ad. No one's clicking on that phone number. Facebook doesn't hyperlink phone numbers, so they can't click it. So they because they're mostly on their phone, that would mean they'd have to like sit there and be like, okay, what's the phone number? Okay, flip over to my phone, type it in, flip back to the ad, remember the number, flip back, finish typing it in. People aren't doing that. You're not getting calls that way. So what you do is create an ad that solves a pain point for them. So for this ad, for example, a guide on how to prepare your home for sale, what we did here is like I actually first asked actually my first client ever, and I said, like, what's the biggest stress that your clients are having about selling their home? And pretty consistently, what agents mostly tell us, oh, they just want to know what price they'll get. They're worried about what price they're going to get. When we actually found when we talked to consumers, we actually conducted some interviews. None of them actually really talked about price as a main thing. It became a byproduct. For them, it was they're stressed about getting their home ready for sale. That's to them the biggest hurdle and obstacle that they were having to deal with. So, as our solution to that, now they talked about that in the way of like they knew if they prepped their home, they could get more money for it than if they just showed it while it was a dump. But so when we found that, what we did is we switched and created like a 3-page checklist that's basically just fill out the form, like, and you can print it out and check things off as you go room by room and get your home ready for sale if you follow it. So it's just like a simple 2-3 page checklist. And we say, you want to see other professionals get homes ready for sale to get the most money for it, click to download our guide. And then they just get a copy of this. The beauty of something like this versus like a what's my home worth is a what's my home worth gets a lot of people who are just curious what their home is worth because like they heard the market's up a lot and they have no intention of selling. Something like this, you don't download a guide on how to prepare your home for sale unless you're thinking of selling. Now, you could still be 2 years from when you're thinking of selling, but you are thinking about it. And that's where you can now start that conversation with them. And that's kind of the key is like, what can we offer them? And now, even on that note, like if you do want to do like a what's my home worth campaign, we recommend switching those to stop. Don't say like, find out what your home is worth. Change the language to something like find out what your home would sell for, because making that change makes the people opting in more likely to be thinking about selling. Because just saying what's my home worth means, oh, like I might have just bought this house. I want to see if I paid the right amount for it, or I'm doing my taxes and I got to do something like that. Whereas saying what would your home sell for, that is a very specific goal and it helps you get the right people in. So when you're writing your ads, think about that language of does this encourage people thinking of moving to actually opt into the ad that I'm running here? Or could it be something else? And that's where a lot of like home worths fall short. But even just changing that language or going to something like this that helps them solve a specific pain point. And that's a big thing with lead magnets. And a lead magnet is literally just something that you give them in exchange for getting their contact info is what's a quick win I can get for them. So it doesn't have to be a checklist. Like it could be you write down 3 things someone can go do today that gets more money for their home. That's like an easy thing to do. Like I'm sure all of you right now, if you just whether you opened up like a word processor or just grabbed a pen and paper, could write down 3 things someone could go home right now and do. And if they did it, it might only be like $500, but they could get more for the home if they did that today. That's what you can offer them is these like really short. They don't need an 80-page ebook on how to sell their home and what walks them through A to Z on how to do that. All you need to do to get their information is do A to B on that like journey to selling their home. So in this case, it worked really well because it's like this is the first step, how to get your home ready for sale. So think about like when you're talking to your clients, like what are the things that's stressing them out? What are things they can go do today and get a win? And we see this all the time. Like it's quick wins that you can get someone today. Because again, that 80-page ebook, they're going to look at it. They're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to be like, that's a lot of steps in there. And I know the kind of the inclination is, well, they'll get overwhelmed. Then they'll just want me to handle it. But that's not the case. They'll just get overwhelmed and shut down and do nothing. Whereas if you're like, hey, here's something you can make progress on. Okay, let me make progress on that one thing. And then once after I see how much further after that I have to go, well, then I'll just hire them to do it. But you still want to make that little bit of progress at the beginning. So think about how you can help them make some type of progress towards their next step, depending on the type of client they are. Like if they're a investor, you're gonna have to offer them something different. Like what is that first win you can get an investor? Like we've seen things like a cap rate table, or if you like input a few little information, you can figure out the cap rate of any property, like a little spreadsheet. download it and customize it yourself. Different things like that. Like, who's your ideal client? What can you offer them as a quick win? And then the biggest mistake people make once they generate leads is like the thank you page. So this is the first place that most people screw up, is they just say, thanks, we'll be in touch. Except this is an opportunity. Like, they just opted in. This is the start of your relationship with them. So offer them something else of value. The reason I call it the double dip offer is literally just because I'm a Seinfeld fan and I wanted to bring in some sort of reference to Seinfeld at some point. And this one worked because everybody loves the double dip episode. But basically, the idea here is like, if they opt in on a guide on how to prepare their home for sale, on the thank you page, now offer them a free home evaluation, because now you know they're a seller. So now we're going to offer them another piece of value that can help them in their situation. You could also then offer them to look for homes. Be like, do you know where you're moving to yet? Click here to search homes for sale that might work for your next home. If they're opting in on a buyer related campaign, you know, roughly anywhere from like 60 to 70% of buyers also have to sell their current home. So you could then switch them on that thank you page. Instead of saying, great, you know, we'll contact you with the information you need about this listing. Do you know what your current home would sell for to help you buy your next one? Opt in below and we'll tell you what your home would sell for today. But using the thank you page as an opportunity to give them another piece of value. And very few people actually do this. And we can see as high sometimes as 20% of leads opting in again. And anyone who opts in again is a much higher quality lead. And there's no limit. Like, if they opt into that offer, you could then send them to another offer and then another one. Like, there's no end to this. Just, we never like to end it on, great, we'll be in touch. Even like the last one, be like, go here to check out what our clients have said about us, or go here to search for properties, but send them somewhere always. Like, don't just end it on thanks, we'll be in touch. You always want to think of like, what's that next step for them? And then you could even retarget those leads with that same offer in ads. So someone opts in, now let's show them an ad on how to take advantage of that secondary offer as well. And a little pro tip here, if you're going to be emailing them something, set a 3 to 5 minute delay on emailing that out if you're doing a secondary offer. Because what happens if it goes instantly, they get the notification they have mail, they'll leave the page to go read the email you just sent them. But if you set a 3 to 5 minute delay, it gives them enough time to read that second page and potentially opt in again before going to their inbox and getting what you just sent them. And we'll even put right on the page, that piece will be in your inbox in the next 3 to 5 minutes, by the way, and then go into the next section. But having the secondary offer is usually the first place we see that people make their mistakes in their online marketing. So always think about this. And this is where it's important, like right now, understanding what someone sees when they become a lead for you. Like, do they stay on the same page? Do they go to the generic thank you page? Do they just get redirected to your homepage? Where are they going when they opt in? And then they're going, okay, how can I change this? And we really recommend double dip offers to make that better. There's also a big misconception out there that long form ads don't work. I can tell you right now that's wrong. As an example, this seller ad, we got $12 a lead, and they're actually all like, I think of these leads that came in, they had conversations with almost 80% of them. The reason that this one worked, and it was a very specific, like, time dependent one. It worked for like 6 weeks, but it worked really well, is we literally sat down and thought, what is every single objection someone would have reading our ad? Because the idea behind this ad was essentially, we have buyers left over from last year who haven't found a place yet. If you're thinking of selling, we already have people ready to buy your home. And we ran that as an ad. But obviously with that, we're like, there's going to be a lot of objections people would have with that. Be like, well, if I sell it off market, does that mean I'm going to lose money? Great, let's answer that right in the ad. And then if they have that objection answered, what other objections might they have? And basically each new like line break you see there is us answering a different objection we thought they would have, so that they wouldn't have any objections left and they'd want to opt in. The beauty of long form ads is that people who get to the end and still opt in are much higher quality. And they have a lot of those questions answered. Now, you will get a certain percent who opt in who didn't read it. That's natural. But it does help a lot to increase the quality and then build relationship with people, because then they can see that you're a little bit more trustworthy. Like, the great example of this, like, I'm sure people who've door knocked understand. Like, I remember I door knocked in a neighborhood one time, and I was like, hey, I got a buyer looking to buy here on Golf Links. Like, would you be interested in selling? They're like, oh, I actually have an agent already. So no. I'm like, great, give me your agent's name. Let me follow up with them and maybe we can make a deal together. But if you can just give me their name, I'll follow up with them. They're like, oh, you're not full of it? Like you actually have someone? Like they were just using the agent thing as a way to brush me off. And as soon as I was like, no, like give me your agent's name and I'll be happy to chat with them. It changed it. And we found like that approach, we put even that into ads. Like we have a buyer ads, but we add details about the client in it. Now we're not going to go like give their last name and their phone number and their address, but we might be like, hey, we got John and Sarah looking for a 4-bedroom home for their family in this neighborhood. If you know anyone thinking of selling, John and Sarah really want a home because they're going to be having a baby soon. And that again makes it real and people more likely to opt in. I mean, yes, you want to be a little bit careful about how much information you share about someone. If you're going to share their information, clear it with them first. And even on like the selling side, we've seen that can work, like especially with doing case studies of sharing, because like you want potential clients to put themselves in their shoes. So you do have to share a little bit of personal information to be able to see them, but you also have to be careful. Like you're not going to be like, this is John and Sarah, they're going through a horrible divorce right now because he was cheating on her like crazy. Like you're not going to share that type of thing in the ad, but use your judgment, share a little bit of information to make it seem more personal, basically enough that any potential client can put themselves in their client's shoes and be like, I see where they were, I want to be where they are now. And then you will be the right person to take them from one place to the other. And that's kind of the approach we're going. But long form works really well. Here's another example of doing like a sequence of ads. So you couldn't actually see here the second ad until you went through the first one. So this is a client of ours who focuses only on pre-construction condos for investors. He doesn't even deal really with end users, it's investors only. But the idea here is follow his money. So you can see it there in the first one, learn how to turn one deposit of 39,000 into $1 million real estate portfolio. And basically I'm going to show you exactly how I did that step by step. Come watch this class. If you opt in and watch that class, you then see the second ad, which is come see how we turned 1 into 3. I will actually personally review your real estate investment portfolio to see if you can make more money from it. And if I ran that ad to the general population, it would be pointless because none of people have a real estate investment portfolio to review. But if you're watching a masterclass on how to better invest your money in real estate, yes, you might be a beginner, but also other investors with small portfolios will do it too. They're more likely to be the ones to actually respond to that ad. So we run that ad to people who opt into the first one. And then we also tested doing like, take that masterclass, put out the full video and retarget anyone who watches a certain percentage of it. But think about that of like, if I put out this ad, who would be the people responding to it? Could I then retarget them with another offer more specific to their situation? And because a lot of people will leave out, it's like, oh, I emailed that to them, I'm not going to make an ad about it. But like most email, like a great email campaign is a 40% open rate, which means 60% of people aren't looking at whatever you emailed them. So run Facebook ads to the email list, and you can now make sure more people see it. Like we have a client just starting up now with us. They have a 30-day email nurture campaign that sends 15 emails over 30 days. And so what we do is for like the day the email gets sent up until the day the next email goes, they see an ad with basically the exact same content as the email that got sent to their inbox. Because we're trying to make sure that they see it no matter what, because that specific sequence is trying to teach them something about the client and warm them up. So we're tagging the Facebook ads with the emails, we're pairing them together to make sure they're hitting on all fronts. Because email alone, any one platform alone is not going to do it. You want to try and hit them on different ones when you can. Another just a great one on the organic front, I just like to add this in, is Instagram stories. If you talk to people who get real business off Instagram, it's from stories is generally where it happens. Like most people I know who get business off Instagram, like there's some you can even look like they almost never post on their feed, but they do a lot in their stories. I just wanted to like play around with like stickers and stories and things like that and understand how people use it. Like one of the easiest ways to get leads, if you have a listing, story about it, and then the last one be like, do you want me to email you the information about this listing? And you can drop a question box. So the question box is meant to be like, hey, ask me a question, I'll answer it in my next story. But you can also use it to capture their email address. So you can be like, you want me to email you information about this listing, just drop your email in the question box below. Everyone puts their email in and wants more information. You can then just email them that data sheet or whatever other information you're promising them. But use the different features. Like there's another feature on there that's a poll, a yes or no poll. You could just do a simple one like, are you planning on making a move in the next 12 months? Yes or no? Everyone who says yes, send them a private message. Like you can't do this every day, but once in a while, throw up one of these, like we call them lead harvesting because it just sounded like a fun word. But it doesn't matter. You're just doing something every now and then. It gets people to reach out and talk about real estate. And something like a poll that says yes or no, I'm planning to move, or I would move for the right price. And then you can respond and then be like, what price would it be that would make you move? Maybe that price is already available. Like you'd be surprised that some people, they're just not paying attention to real estate prices and don't know they could already get the price that they would make them move. So just every now and then putting up these types of stories on Instagrams that create these conversations can go a long way in helping you generate more leads. Now we're going to jump into actually how to convert them. So like, again, generating them is easy. If you have a listing, basically just put up an ad for it, you'll get leads off it. Give them something of value in exchange for their contact. That's the beginning part. And a lot of people look at it as like, this is a really tough mountain to climb of like getting leads. Once you actually start and see how to generate leads, it's actually really easy. It's not a complicated process to get leads. The tough part, and this is across the board, is you got the lead. There's actually a much bigger challenge here, which is converting those leads into actual clients. And we see this all the time, is like people get up there, they start generating leads, and then it's like, oh, this is way too much work. And then they stop. And those are the people you'll talk to, like online leads don't work, internet marketing doesn't work. It's because they started getting leads. They had no idea how to follow up because it's a very different way of doing business. And then they just fell off. If you can solve that second piece, which is lead conversion, that's where you start getting a real return. So it's implementing an effective follow-up plan that has two different considerations in plan that'll actually get you to that second part there. That's actually turning into real clients. So we're going to kind of walk through the two phases. One is the short-term plan, because there's this initial part when you get a lead of how do I get them to actually talk to me? And then there's the long-term. What if someone says, no, I'm not looking for 12 months to move or longer? How are you going to follow up with them for those 12 months? So first we'll talk about that initial piece, then we'll get into more of that long-term nurturing. So to oversimplify online lead conversion, all you're trying to do is just create as many conversations as possible about real estate. So someone saying, no, I'm not looking to move is not a dead end. That is the start of a conversation about you finding out when would they be looking to move and then staying in touch with them. But always think about what you're trying to do here is just create as many conversations, because you never know where those will go. Like I remember when I used to sell, like my first listing I ever got actually came from a basement apartment rental where her boyfriend showed up, and we just started chatting real estate, and I found out he had a apartment or a house to sell in a few months. I was like, do you mind if I follow up with you in a few months? And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I guess he was just brushing me off, assuming I wouldn't. And I followed up with him, sure enough. But if I hadn't like taken that random basement apartment lead and have these conversations about real estate, it wouldn't have come up. And that's the key, is just have as many conversations about real estate as you can. And this is a big mistake people make initially when they're dealing with leads, is they don't think of it as trying to create a conversation. They're trying to go straight to like a closing, straight to someone signing a BRA, straight to that in-person appointment. When your initial follow-up, all it's designed to do is get a conversation started with people. So even if you have to take like 7 or 8 back and forth over email or text before you can even say like, hey, do you want to jump on a phone call? That's okay. You're just trying to have a conversation at this point. So that initial follow-up, short and sweet messages to get people to respond. So as an example, like someone looks up and responds in your listing, you guys have probably all at some point heard the line, oh no, thanks, I'm just looking. Great, there's a conversation starter. Are you looking for yourself or as an investment? Then they answer. Then you start that conversation going and you ask them more and you're curious about their situation. So like, and to me, an ideal initial follow-up can be automated or not, but if you're going to automate it, have the automation shut off if they respond to it. So if they respond to your text message that goes out automatically, have it shut off once they do, so that now you can jump in and have an actual conversation with them. That's the key here. The way that we like to say is, if you're this initial one, call as soon as the lead comes in and you can realistically get to it, then text them then email them. You don't want to just do one. You want to try all three because they might not respond to one. But I'm not a big fan. You can do it of like doing the texting, hey, is this Sandra? Question mark, but not saying who you are. And people are like, yeah, who's this? That's kind of like a misleading way that leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. So I don't like doing that personally. It can work. It's the same principle as double dialing someone. And it's a practice where like you call them. If they don't pick up, you call right back because then people think it's like an emergency and I should talk to them. But a lot, like I know if it was me, I'd be like, not right now because my kids aren't in school, they're at home, but I'd be like, is it my kid's school? Are they saying there's something wrong with them? Like if I see the number call back a bunch of times, I think there might actually be emergency. If it's an agent who wants to answer a question about a listing, I'm actually probably going to get annoyed personally. But I do know people who say they get like a 50% higher rate of getting on the phone with people by double or triple dialing them. Again, it's not my style. It's not the type that I would personally do, but I have seen it work for people. If it's okay with you, go for it. But just keep in mind, you will piss enough people off doing it that way too. So keep that in mind if you're going to go that route. But this initial follow-up, don't think of it as I'm trying to get them on the phone. I'm trying to get them into the house. I'm trying, no, your initial follow-up has one goal, and that's just to get them to answer. That's it. You're trying, and even if that is a no and they tell you where to go, stick it, that's okay. That's an answer. Like I have seen clients close someone who told them the magic 4-letter F word. Like it happens. Like we actually, great example, if you guys know Ara Memorian, who's downtown Toronto, it's one of my favorite stories. He, in our Facebook group, I was like 9:30 at night. He goes, hey, someone just opted in on one of my campaigns. It's 9:30 on a Friday. Should I call them? And you know, some people were like, no, don't. It's too late on a Friday. Others like, nah, they just opted in. Go for it. And he goes, all right, I'm doing it. I'm calling them on a Friday night. Called them. The guy told him to F off. Why are you calling me this late? And like laid into him. So he comes back into the thread. He's like, all right, he told me to F off. I hate all of you for telling me to call him. And then like 20 minutes later, he sends an update. I texted him back saying, sorry for calling. I only called because you just opted in and I wanted to provide good service. He's like, the guy ended up apologizing to me for his language and saying, sorry, I'm going through a divorce right now. This wasn't about you. This is just on me. We have 2 houses to sell and I'm going to have to buy another one. Would you mind coming by tomorrow to tell me what it's worth? So you ended up turning an F off into 3 deals. Like it's, again, he started the conversation. That's an extreme example of how that will go, but that's the key here is he's just trying to start as many conversations about real estate as he can and then seeing where those conversations go. Because like almost no ad campaign is going to be the reason someone's moving. Like you're not changing someone's motivation to move unless just like the perfect house at the perfect time, but they're already thinking about moving then. But what you're trying to do is start these conversations with as many people as possible to find the people looking to move soon. But that's the goal. And then we also add in aggressive short-term retargeting ads. And so what this might look like for like an example of this one is for the first like 5 days after someone becomes a lead, we're going to hit them for 5 days with a very aggressive ad. That's like, if you're thinking of selling your home, here's how we can help you get more money for it. And then in this case, it just lists out everything they do for sellers. If you can, and I recommend this, create a like proprietary system. And it could be the same that every other agent does, but you just give it a name. Like we have a client right now in Toronto, they have a selling process they call the Avenue. They sell in the Avenue area. They call it the Avenue selling process. He was the top salesman in the NBA for years for MLSE. So we're like, he was a top salesman for MLSE for years. He's now bringing that to create the Avenue selling system to get more money for their homes when they sell. And we're making it sound like it's a proprietary system that he has. And yeah, technically it is proprietary because that's just how he does it, but it's a lot of the same stuff most agents do. But taking that approach of I have a signature system to get better results. So whatever your like process is to sell a home, just give it a name and then start naming that, because what happens is people want it too. Like there's a competitor of mine that they called remarketing tag marketing. And we get people all the time being like, can you do tag marketing for us? And I'll be like, yeah, that's remarketing. They're like, no, I don't want remarketing. I want tag marketing. I'm like, that's just remarketing. They just brilliantly renamed it something else so that when people saw it, they just thought it would be something that was like exclusive to them because no one else is talking about this brilliant tag marketing strategy. You can take that same approach where you take something that everyone's doing, give it your own name, and now they're going to think it's proprietary to you. So that's what, it's always good to name your process so that when you can talk about it, like for instance, this client here, I believe they call it the stage and sold action plan to get your home sold. So we just talked about the stage and sold action plan that gets more money for homes. Because if you compare your stats, generally speaking, almost every agent, if you actually like look at the stats that's like active in the business, gets a higher than average sale to list ratio. So you can be like, our homes on average get X amount more than almost every other agent according to Treb stats or whatever stats you're pulling them from. I mean, just make sure that's accurate if you're going to make those claims. Check them, double check them, triple check them. And then just if you're going to do that, don't use percentages. So don't say like I sell for 2% more than average. Turn that into a dollar amount. So if the average home in your area is like, 100,000, which obviously it's not, but for simple math, 2% of that, $2,000, just say our homes sell on average for $2,000 more than everyone else. Putting that in like real numbers for people helps it a lot, and putting these into these aggressive short-term ads. And all you're trying to do here is find those people looking to move right now. And that's why it's short-term, because after like 5 days, if they haven't responded to something like this, they're not moving right now. So now you can put them into your long-term follow-up plan. And this is a Dean Jackson principle. I talk about Dean a lot for lead conversion because he's like the guy for lead conversion. But the process here in this early stage is to identify the 5-star prospects. What that means, a 5-star prospect is exactly what it says, which is someone who's willing to engage with you. They're friendly and cooperative while they're engaging with you. They know what they want. They know when they want it, and they want your help to do it. So when you're looking at how you're following up with them, think about, am I identifying all 5 of these points when I'm talking to someone? And that can help you figure out, build out that follow-up system is I should be finding out all 5 of these things when I'm talking to people initially. So in that initial conversation you're trying to create, you're trying to check these boxes. Willing and engage and friendly cooperative is a very easy thing to figure out. Like if they tell you where to stick it, that's not someone who's friendly and cooperative. May turn into it down the road, but they're not. But finding out, do they know what they want, when they want it, and is there a chance they want your help to do it? Because they might, for example, one of my best referral sources for when I was selling is actually a guy who could never use me because his mother-in-law was an agent. He didn't actually even like his mother-in-law that much, but he's like, I can't not use her. It's my mother-in-law. But he referred all his friends and family to me. So, but he would never be a 5-star prospect for me because he would never want he wanted my help. He just couldn't do it. But he basically can't do that one, but his friends would want my help. So they would be 5-star prospects. So think about that when you're building it out. And really one of the important things is to constantly be building your list of potential clients, even between listings, things like that. Because one of the idea here is instead of having to, when you get a listing, trying to find people to sell it to, build a list of people so that when you have a listing, you already have the people to sell it to. And there's different strategies around this, but think about building the audience of people before you have something to sell them. So that when you have something to sell, you already have people to sell it to. There's different strategies around doing this. I think one of the best people who does this is Chuck Charlton. If you guys know him, I know he's in Royal LePage in the Milton area. But for instance, this is one of the ads we're running for him to generate more people on his list. And he regularly emails out the list about what's going on in the Milton real estate market. But he every day is adding people to this list so that now if he has a listing and he wants to email it out, he already has thousands and thousands of people who are interested in Milton real estate. And he can email them at any time with a new listing or a potential listing and say, hey, we got this one coming up. Would you be interested in it? It's a really easy way to then kind of get your listings going and build trust by saying you have a lot of it already. Personal recommendation is weekly emails. A lot of people think that's too much. I think a monthly is actually just as bad as an annual one. Monthly, by the time they get it again, they're almost going to forget about it. I know that every time I've increased the frequency of our emails, our revenue goes up. I used to do a monthly email because I didn't think about it. Then I was like, no, weekly is probably too much. So I switched to bi-weekly. When I switched from monthly to bi-weekly, our revenue took a spike. When I switched from bi-weekly to weekly, it did a really big spike. I mean, people tell me now to go to daily. I'm not quite comfortable with daily emails, to be honest. But most serious people who do email marketing say that you only send emails on days you want to make money. That's the simple way to think about email marketing. Like if you have something you can send every day, send it. Now that could be listings. Like when you sign someone up for Prospect Match, that is a form of email marketing. It's not a great form of email marketing from the perspective that like most consumers have like 10 people already. But it's a form of email marketing. So think about it from that perspective of what could I send people? So like the weekly email I recommend is just a recap of the market. Here's the new listings on that are good deals, and here's why they're good deals. That's the key part here. Because like the Prospect Match just sends out the listing with no context. You want to send an email that proves you're the expert. So if you're going to send a listing and say, hey, here's a deal of the week, tell them why you think it's a good deal. Then you just add in also to the email, like here's what's sold in the last week, and here's why you might care about these ones that they sold. Depending on the volume of transactions in the area you're serving, that will change like how your email is. Like if there's only 2 or 3 new listings a week, just include them all. If there's 50, you have to cherry pick the certain ones that are more notable. But you can do that however you want and test it out. But I would actually recommend sending this out weekly. If you're going to go from a list that you've almost never emailed regularly, tell them you're going to do it and give them an option to opt into this new one. Because you don't like, especially like your past clients, you don't necessarily want them to be like unsubscribing so you can't contact them anymore just because you went from never emailing to weekly. So what we say is like to our existing list, send an email saying opt into our new list that we're going to be sending out. That's going to make you the smartest person in the world about X real estate market. Because a lot of people want to stay informed. Like I do the same thing for like agents for our newsletter. I just say like become the smartest realtor in the room in 10 minutes once a week. Take the same approach for yours of like become the smartest, person in real estate in 10 minutes once a week right in your inbox. Like that idea of like I'm going to make you better informed about the local market. So it's like, what would I include in this email? The same type of content you would include if someone came to you at a party and said, how's the market today? And you can answer that in an email because a lot of people want to know that type of information. And I just want to give you another tip because I've talked about Dean a few times and I always like to plug him. He has the 9-word email that revives dead leads. Honestly, this works. There's a guy out in London, Justin Conoco, who we actually had do this recently. And he's like, I got all these dead leads. I was like, well, send them 9-word email. And he was asking me what that is. So he sent this out to 1,200 dead leads. So these were leads that were 3 months or older that had never responded to anything he had sent them before. And he booked 40 calls off of it from all these dead leads. The email is really simple. So he works out in London. So the subject line was homes in London. The email said, hi, are you still looking to buy a home in London? That's the entire email. Obviously, after that, he put his signature with his RICO information in it. We have tested this. Don't add in stuff like, hey, hope you're doing well. Hope the year's starting off great for you. Are you still looking to buy a home in wherever you work? Adding in that extra intro decreases the amount of people who respond. We've tested this out. Keep it short and sweet. Hi, are you still looking to buy a home in? You can also do this with sellers. If you have an abundance of seller leads, hi, you still looking to sell your home in, and then the area. And then subject lines, again, very simple, homes in area. Or you can just make it your home and then just make it a very simple one. These work almost every time you send them out. But a big thing when you're getting into all this, don't forget about your people that are in your database already, your past clients, your A+ people in your sphere, because all your online marketing is doing is trying to add people to your database because the majority of your business will always come from your database. So like we had a client one time who had an ISA who, not telling us, did a test of half the time the ISA spent calling their database, half the time spent calling our leads. And after he's like, we're going to have to let you guys go because we did a test, half the time spent calling the database, half the time calling the leads, and you got more business from the database. I was like, I could have told you that without you having to do the test. You will always get more business from the database. Those are the people who know, like you, and trust you. The goal of internet marketing is just to add more people to that database so that you can grow your business more effectively that way. So you can't think of them as two separate things. Your goal with your online marketing is to find people to add to your database to get more business because that's where your business. And I find too many people do this where they start diving into this and then they forget about their database. Whereas that's where the majority of your business is coming from. Like actually I mentioned earlier, I just filmed an episode with the guy who's the #1 team in Canada. He even like, that's his biggest challenge is they became so dependent on leads that it's like 90% of their business comes from new people. They almost do no repeat and referral because they're so focused, but you have to spend so much to keep that level of stuff coming in. So if he could now work on his repeat and referral, like he could be #1 team in the world. Like it's that level of difference that he's leaving on the table by not going after them that way. But never forget about your database, and this happens a lot, we find. So if you have any questions, before we get into questions and all that, these are some books I always recommend reading. They help a lot. Exactly What to Say. He actually now has a version called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. It's just a great book, short, sweet, helps you kind of like what to say to prospects and leads. How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an old classic. I actually still like, even though it was written in like the 20s or whatever it was, I still find it's like actually one of the best things for social media. The things that they say in there of like how to get people to, how to influence them. I take the same principles, just bring them to social media. It works. The other ones, the Disney one, Be Our Guest, and then Never Lose a Customer Again, are just some of the best like customer service books you can get. So if you are into reading books to help your business, I highly recommend these 4. These are 4 that I actually try to reread every year because I find that it's very much worth it for me. The ROI has been huge. If you have any questions, you want to see kind of what we do, how we can help you, justsellhomes.com. We put our pricing right up there on the site, so you can see everything that we do. Everything's out there. And if you do go to our site and you say, oh, I want to work with these people, they seem all right, and you can book a call with me directly. I bought the domain bookandrew.ca. It just forwards to my calendar link, and you can actually book a call right into my calendar. Whether that's to talk to us about hiring us, or if you're just like with your Facebook ads, if you're getting a ton of rejections lately, you can't get ads up, you're not getting results, we do offer a free Facebook ad review call. So we can actually go and review your Facebook ads for free and see where potentially you can make them better. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to stay. So you can either unmute yourself, put them in the chat. I'm happy to stick around. I know we're right up on 2 now. So if you guys gotta go. Otherwise, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes if you want to ask me some questions.
These were all new slides, weren't they, Andrew? Or newer? Like I haven't seen any of this stuff before, and I follow you a lot.
I made this 6 months ago, I think, but I've only presented it like 4 times. So yeah,
I was going to say 6 months ago. What the heck? We're on the downward slope there.
So I created this for one office specifically that asked for this presentation. So I created it new, and then I've been refining it before I do like a full. So I think I'm ready now. I'm actually going to now like turn it into like a public webinar. So you guys got it before it went big. But I've been like testing 2 or 3 webinars lately, and this is one of the 2 that's going to make the final cut.
Cool. Randall, you're here. You just unmuted, and then maybe you remuted or you left. Yeah, if anybody does have any questions, I'll tell you every time I have a question about anything to do with anything internet. And I think I'm pretty savvy and pretty knowledgeable, but every time I have a question, Andrew is the only person that I go to, and he always gives me a really quick answer. So awesome. I just outed my privilege. You're going to be bombarded by everybody on this call going, Andrew helps.
Half the time with Sandra, I actually just opened up another tab, Googling it, then responding. I'm really quick.
Not all that simple. Listen. Does anybody have any questions for Andrew? If you don't have any questions, and the fact that everybody stayed means that you've done really well, obviously, at providing the information that people need to know. MK asks if you have any advice for a new agent, and I see that Karen is also unmuted and probably has a question that she'd like to ask as well.
Well, why don't you ask, and then I'll jump into the new agent question after that.
Andrew, I have been trying to post my own Facebook advertising. I obviously had that issue with the geographical area being in Toronto. Like I have to go 15 miles, which is massive.
Where in Toronto
what is the best, pardon me?
Where in Toronto do you work?
Hyde Park, Bloor West Village, Etobicoke.
Put the middle of the pin in the lake.
I tried that.
You can't go too far or they'll disapprove you, but just test a little bit and you at least lose some of the extra.
Yeah. Okay. I did try that. And then I also actually, something so simple, I could not attach my ad. And I created it on Canva. So it was a little moving thing, but I could not attach it.
So did you create it like a little GIF basically? And then so did you select image or video?
I don't know.
It said image. It's meant to be like a still image. So if you're going to do like something like a GIF, you basically make it like a short video, then upload it as a video.
Oh, is that the problem? Because I think this
Probably.
Facebook
I mean,
said attach image. And
yeah,
then,
without seeing it exactly, it's hard to 100%
Okay.
say. My guess would be that that's what it is that you, because of the way you create it with like a moving thing, it's actually technically a video. So you'd have to switch to add video instead of add image, because they're generally looking for still images under the
how do
image.
you switch to
Where it
add
says
video?
add image, there's usually a drop down to the next to it.
Okay.
Switch to add video instead.
Okay, sounds so easy. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. If you have any issues, shoot us a message and we can jump on Zoom and solve it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Input for new agent. I mean, that's a broad topic. There's a lot there that we can cover. I mean, normally my advice for new agents is join a team. I think it's a good place to get experience, but if you're not joining a team, which I certainly didn't when I sold, that's because well, there's a whole other reasons for that. I would say like start providing information like similar, like there's not a ton difference. Like the biggest difference for new agents is you don't have listings to leverage. So like what I did when I sold to solve that is I just asked people in my office if I could market their listings for them. Like the only time I ever got told no was the number one guy in town said no. Every other person I ever asked if I could market their listing for them said yes. And you can leverage listings. Like listings are the easiest way to get people, because that's what everyone wants. Like people are always like, oh, they want an agent who's trustworthy. They want someone who will tell them the truth. No, they want a house. They don't care that much about you. They want a house, or they want to sell their home and get the most money for it. The agent's the middle piece of that they need to get there, but ultimately they care about that end result. They want a house, so give them a house. If you don't have a house they market, offer them a list of houses. But just get started thinking like the ultimate goal here is either I want a house or I want to sell my house. And the easiest one there is to work on the people who want to buy a house. And even right now, the most effective way to get seller leads right now, because everybody wants them, is to target buyers, because everyone has the same objection right now as a seller of where will I go next? Because there's not as many listings out there. So tell them you'll help them find their next home. And so it's like when you're running a buyer ad, make it focused on the type of buyer who'd probably have to sell their current home to get the type of home you're talking about. And then in your conversations you're having in your follow-up, you uncover the piece about where they're living now, whether they rent or own, and then you get into that piece of it. But right now, the most effective way to target sellers is buyers. And also go hard on social media. You got a lot of time. Organic, Instagram stories. Actually, Facebook stories for me have been just as good, interestingly, as Instagram stories for results. Now, I have a much bigger following on Facebook, so those results are a little bit skewed. But I get more reach and more engagement off my Facebook stories, which is 100% just every time I create an Instagram story, I just hit also post it to Facebook. But just by doing that, I will actually get more out of my Facebook one. Again, that's not a hard and fast rule for everyone. It's just I have a much bigger following on Facebook because I've been doing that one longer and I just spend more time there. Any other questions?
Covers everything, I think.
Sweet. I always like that. Or they're just like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm out.
Randall
your
has come
time,
back and I
Andy.
see,
Yeah.
oh, there you are,
Just
Randall.
wanted
Go
to say
ahead.
thank you. That was great. Very informative. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. Good. Thanks, Randall. Thanks everybody for joining us. And for those of you sticking around until the bitter end, Andrew, as always, much
Thank you.
appreciated. We'll have you back in another 5 or so months, depending on what kind of feedback I'm getting from our realtors. With that being said, to anybody watching this, either the recording or that is still here, if you have any questions or any needs for specific topics that you think that Andrew or anybody else might be able to serve, please feel free to let me know, and we're happy to set those sessions up for you. And we'll definitely be having Andrew back in the next couple of months to talk about whatever it is that's new and trending in Facebook land. So Andrew, as always, thank you again so much. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Greatly appreciated. Have a good afternoon, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
See you, everyone.